continue to weigh on domestic consumption. Exports jumped at their sharpest pace in April, more than a decade, while consumer inflation hit a near four-year high, driven by higher energy and food costs. The BOK also projected that consumer inflation this year will now hit 1.8%, up from its previous estimate of 1.3%. It's now preparing to pull back on its run of pandemic-era record low interest rates. Singtel has posted its lowest earnings in at least 2 decades. Now, annual net profit came in at 554 million Sing dollars, down by 49% compared to a year ago. The bottom line was dragged lower by exceptional charges of close to 1.2 billion Sing dollars, including non-cash impairment charges for investments in Amobee and Trustwave. But Singtel's operating revenue was also down 5% on year. Singtel CEO said the disappointing results were mainly caused by the COVID-19 disruptions and ongoing structural challenges. But its subsidiary NCS and data center services were the bright spots, showing strong growth as enterprises rush to digitalize and transform their businesses. Singtel has begun a strategic review of some of its units. And looking ahead, Singtel will invest more in 5G and expand its market share in Singapore and Australia. Sachin Mittal of DBS Bank tells us why he's keeping a close eye on India when considering the outlook for Singtel.
For Singtel, I think the key driver for growth will come from turnaround of Bharti. Bharti has already turned around from losses into profits. And so in that sense, that is essentially going to be the key earnings driver, because we are looking at double-digit growth for Singtel, mainly led by Bharti Airtel. And besides that, we're expecting that the core business in Singapore and Australia, hopefully, we have seen the worst of pandemic and roaming has kind of bottomed out. Difficult for it to drop any further from where we have seen already during the pandemic. Hopefully, the core business stabilizes, Bharti turns around, and that should kind of give the growth. 5G business is an opportunity and also a high capex kind of a risk. And in that sense, I'm not very positive on the overall 5G scenario. I think all of us know about high capex of 5G. The question is, how much growth can be derived from 5G? Singtel is betting big on 5G. We have to wait and see what happens in the future on 5G.
Well, Singtel shares were down by as much as 3.2%. Before paring some of those losses, it ended the session down by 0.4%. The STI, meanwhile, gained 0.6% this session. Elsewhere in the region, sentiment is being weighed down by fears that central banks might start to consider winding back their emergency stimulus. The Nikkei was also hurt by concerns over a possible extension of COVID-19 emergency measures. It lost 0.33%. While in South Korea, tech heavyweights dragged the benchmark down just under the flat line. The Shanghai Comp gained 0.4% this session. Subdued industrial data calmed worries over policy tightening. And in Hong Kong, shares of Next Media, which is owned by pro-democracy tycoon Jimmy Lai, ended the day 50% higher. That's after the company said it had enough working capital for at least the next 18 months. Well, that's it for business. Back to you.
Now, about 900 Singaporeans will have to defer their Hajj pilgrimage for a second year. Those affected will be reallocated places next year. The Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, or MUIS, says this is in view of the global COVID-19 situation.
Internationally, we are seeing multiple countries that have multiple waves of spike in their COVID numbers. And there is also reports that there are variants of the viruses that is being seen and detected at multiple countries, even in our country, Singapore. And different countries have different so-called speed and rate of vaccinating their citizens. So all these will probably or definitely increase the risk for travel.
The Fatwa Committee, Association of Muslim Travel Agents and Hajj General Service Agents support Muissa's decision. It comes a month before Singapore Hajj flights typically start departing for Mecca. While Saudi Arabia has not made an official decision, Muis says it's unclear if the Hajj pilgrimage will be open to international pilgrims. And with increased safety restrictions and quarantine measures, the Association of Muslim Travel Agents says Hajj packages will cost significantly more and result in a longer travel time.
Limitation of manpower either from the GSA or the locals over in the kingdom is also an area of concern. And fourthly, until today, we have yet to find an insurance company that will have a full medical coverage inclusive of COVID-19. And lastly, the whole movement of Hajj is uncertain, with many unforeseen circumstances that cannot be predicted during this unprecedented time.
Muis says it hopes the decision will help ease the anxieties of the pilgrims and their families. Hajj deposits paid in 2020 will be refunded. Singapore has reported 15 new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases. 3 of them are unlinked cases, while 1 is in a foreign worker dormitory. The Health Ministry says all 12 linked cases were already quarantined. There are also 9 imported cases. Of these, 7 are returning Singaporeans or Singapore permanent residents. All the imported cases were placed on stay-home notice or isolated upon arrival. The 24 new cases takes a national tally to 61,940. Frog skin and fish scales can soon be used to repair human bones. Scientists at Nanyang Technological University have developed a way to use the biomaterial instead of a patient's own tissues. It will also help tackle the problem of aquaculture waste. In a first-of-its-kind study, the team used discarded bullfrog skin and fish scales to create the biomaterial. It acts as a scaffold for cells to multiply, leading to a formation of a new bone. Patients with jaw defects from trauma or cancer surgery may use this recovery method in a clinical setting in about 5 years' time. It also could be used for bone growth, such as dental implants.
The normal way of getting the sources, the collagen sources, and our in-house development method, we can actually save up to 40% of the time to get the same exact materials. So it's more than 40% of the shortening of the time frame to get our final product compared to the traditional methods.
Coming up, calls for a ceasefire in Ethiopia's war-ravaged Tigray region by the US president. And later, a decade after Japan's Fukushima nuclear disaster, we take a look at what it's like for residents who have returned.
Bearing the brunt of worsening global warming.
As we see the whole landscape changing, it is really impacting our way of life.
Can we reduce our carbon footprint to fight climate change?
We're doing our bit to not rely so much on the coal-fired power stations to power what we do in our house.
Are the steps we're taking really enough? CNA correspondent fighting climate change. Friday on CNA.
So little land, with so many mouths to feed.
Land matters. The future is going to be really challenging.
Dan akhirnya dibuang seperti ini dengan mubazir sangat disayangkan sekali.
Ini adalah solusinya.
We